if so, everybody should know it's recording in progress.
Yeah,
And then similar to what we've done in the past, if it's okay, I'll put together a little YouTube link that people can click and watch.
perfect. That's
Okay,
great.
good, good. So I was going to say, I think I had 10 people counting me, so I see 9 on my screen. Everybody see 9?
Yep.
And then
Yep.
we may have 1 or 2, Joyce just said, who may join us later.
Yeah, Beth is going to join late and Buddy has to hop off early. So this way we can get
Okay.
everybody by recording it. Everybody can have the same access to information.
Okay, very good. So Joyce, I know you wanted to do a little light introduction, and then I'll share my screen and walk through what we want to learn and practice together. So, okay.
Awesome. Well, as most of you saw in the email that I sent out this morning, we have, and we also announced it at the all staff meeting, our October webinar to do the deeper dive into emotional intelligence has been moved up, and we're now doing it in person at the September staff retreat. And so all of you will be very instrumental in helping us do this training and have it come off as impactful as what I think it really can. Each of you will be table guides for the breakout sessions when we're working through the workplace scenarios and getting to put our emotional intelligence to practice. So with that, I will let Richard kind of go through what we're going to be doing.
Okay, very good. Well, I want to say I hear some familiar voices and see some familiar faces from our April session, and I want to thank you again on a couple levels. Let's see, Beth is just joining us, so let me add her. And I will go ahead and share the slide deck. And can everybody see the slides?
Yep.
Okay, very good. So I wanted to start off with my own personal thank you. I understand this is the engagement committee and everyone is fully engaged and ready to be engaged. And thank you for, on a couple levels, one for the work that you're doing consistently with Ohio Capital. Secondly, for the work that you've been doing with Joyce on our April follow-up. And I love the scenarios that you gave me to kind of fill out a few sentences for us to practice that deeper dive. And my intention today is to have this session be very conversational. So I don't want to have this be a Richard lecture. I want to do a light refresh, kind of look back at April with just a limited number of slides, and then practice how we would do this now in the room on September 12th. So I'll be the in the room as kind of the overall guide facilitator. Joyce and I will be partnering on that. And then everyone will be assigned to be a table guide or facilitator to go over those scenarios, looking through those lenses of emotional intelligence, personality, competing business priorities. So what I wanted to say is today, I want it to be conversational, practice. We're not going to be perfect today, but we will reveal some things that we may want to add to some notes and facilitator instructions and those kinds of things. So before I start flipping through slides, any questions about kind of the overall goal for today?
I have a quick comment, and that is I noticed Jody put in the chat that she's going to be out in September when we have our staff retreat. And I was a little bit concerned about that because the dates. So we will have one less person to be a table guide, but yeah, we're sad she can't join us because I think she'd be amazing at it. But you know, we'll muddle through anyway with the group we have.
Yeah, and Joyce, she shared that with me before we got started here this morning, and I told her that she would be a follow-up guide. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
we're gonna have everybody helping in many ways. So I wanted to start with a just a quick overview of who we have here on this, and our overall goal is to learn together and grow together. Since I don't know each person individually, I thought we'd do some round robin introduction. So if I can just get Joyce, is this a confirmation of who we have on the session today?
Yeah, but it looks like we have everyone here, so I'll just let other folks kind of say who they are.
Okay,
Now we can put a
so
face to the
yeah,
who's doing what.
yeah. So here's what I'm going to be asking you to do. We're just going to kind of take turns, and with our name, our role and tenure at Ohio Capitol. If you're comfortable, give me a personal observation from the April session. Some learning, some lesson application that you've been cognizant of about emotional intelligence, psychological safety, or that formula we talked about, how we all have a trigger that prompts us to behave, and then we get a result. So anything you'd like to say about any of those concepts is fine. And then just on a silly note, I'd like for each one of us to give our rock band name. And I don't know if you've done something like this before, but here's the version of this that I use. And your rock band name is the color of the top that you are wearing and the last thing that you ate. So for example, blue shirt, the last thing I ate was a boiled egg. So my rock band name is Blue Boiled Egg. This is probably the most complicated thing I'm asking. So color of your top, shirt, blouse, and the last thing you ate. So, and I see a few smiles already. So I'm going to go back to the slide, and I'm just going to ask in the order that I had the names. Romera, would you like to go first? And everybody needs to take themselves off mute and then just go through name, role, etc.
So it's pronounced Raymara.
Raymara.
Raymara. So I'm Raymara Reeves. I am the HR generalist, and I've been with Ohio CAP for 1.5 years. My observation, it's a very important topic, not just because of the role I'm in, HR, but I think every role can benefit from emotional intelligence. So I thought it was a real good session. And then my rock band name is Black and White Sandwich.
Thank you.
What kind of sandwich?
It was a roast beef sandwich
Okay.
at a party last night.
Thank you, Ramar. Let's see, Rhonda. And you're on mute, Rhonda.
Sorry, you would think we'd all know this by heart now. My name is Rhonda Snyder, and I manage all the corporate events and all the conferences for Ohio Capitol and some of our partners. And I've been at OCCH for 21 years. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the the training back in April. I feel like we've been in so many trainings. So I guess I need a refresh on the training that we had back in April. And then rock name would be Blue Muffin.
Very good. Thank you. And let's see, I have Raymond Buddy next.
Yes, thank you. I'm Buddy Butler, and I've been at Ohio Capitol for it'll be 16 years now in January. And I am the LMS platform manager and e-learning developer for the Affordable Housing Training Academy. And one of the observations that I have that I made when we initially talked about this as the recap of the training was that I felt like we didn't get deep enough into it. And I think it's great that we're able to do this and have you back to deliver the training again in person, since last time it was virtual. But yeah, I think it's an extremely important topic and something that needs more than just a brief time period and then we walk away and are expected to have a good grasp of it. My rock band name would be White Sushi.
I was going to say thank you for the endorsement and for the prompt on the deeper dive. I think the applications are important, and these rock band names are pretty cool. Tamara?
I almost said here.
Hmm.
We know this. I'm Tamara. I'm a reserves specialist, and observation would be, well, lesson is I think I'm pretty emotionally intelligent because I also have many best friends, in my opinion. But I do also agree with Buddy. I feel as though it's possibly something that people will kind of do the filling out of a form, but when it comes to having a discussion, it feels like it might be crickets, and that's when it is really important to have a discussion. And I kind of sometimes feel like that's when it could be lost, and sometimes further discussion sort of halts when people don't want to talk any further about, well, but the survey says this, or the forms that were filled out say this, and nobody wants to discuss anything further. And so I think those are observations I get. I don't know. My Ross band name is Black Vegetable.
So somebody's eating healthy. Thank you. Granville?
Hi, my name's Granville Harris. I'm the IT manager for Ohio Capital. I've been here for about 2.5 years. Basically, the IT department, we manage, we've got the network side of things, the PCs, the servers, and then we also take care of we have an in-house Pixis application, a software development application called Pixis, and we have 2 folks that take care of that and on the development team. One personal observation lesson from April. There was a lot of stuff that you covered, and I mean, for myself, it's just that, that quick thinking when you're in a meeting and someone says something, you have that quick response in your mind to kind of don't say something, that sit back and just kind of think a little bit more before you say something. That's one thing. I forget exactly how you worded that in the training, but I think it's more just you got to retrain the way you respond to things, or take more time before you respond. I think Joyce kind of mentioned too. I think it was like hopefully I don't have this mixed up in another training, but it was just to be able to stand up for other folks and stuff like that. Say if I jumped on Rhonda about saying something, which I wouldn't do, but then Joyce might step up and say, hey, she's been doing this and doing that, why would you say something like that? Or, just kind of stand up for her a little bit. So I thought those were really good. And I'd say my rock band, I've got a blue shirt on, blue, and I was going to say Blue Nature Valley, but I could say Blue Sweet Salty Nut. I mean, peanut bar, Nature Valley. That's what I had last. So
Very good. And Granville, thank you for reinforcing the point about, I use the word pause.
Yeah.
Let me pause and consider. And when we get into practice in a few minutes, even in the session right now, we're gonna practice. What do you pause about? And what are those considerations to kind of go through? It takes a while, like any new learning, but let me understand that pause button is the first thing to do. Thank you. Let's see, Beth, I have you next.
Hi, good morning. Beth, I'm a vice president of development. I've been here 22 some odd years. I think for me, the training just kind of solidified just some ideas about the importance of communication and clarity. And I think that when we did the breakouts and we talked about this as a group, there was just kind of some uncertainty of where to go and who was kind of taking the lead. So I think that's why we concocted the scheme that somehow we volunteered to then help lead the breakouts. at the next opportunity. So I'm glad we're going to have a chance to do that. I appreciate we're getting a little guidance here. I felt like the breakouts were also pretty small. I feel like my group only had 3 people, maybe 4. And it just seemed like people weren't quite sure where to go. And in terms of my rock band name, it'd be a gray and white bagel. So that doesn't sound very appetizing.
Okay.
Or rocking. So I don't know. I feel like I should come up with a different name, but I'm being...
Yeah. Sounds like that one may have been burnt in a toaster, but okay. Thank you. Thank you, Beth. And thank you for the clarity and communication. Important points. Jody?
My name is Jody, and I am the Operations and Portfolio Administrator for OCFC, which is our lending arm of OCCH. I've been here for 3.5 years. My observation is I work with a lot of really busy people, and it's very tempting and very easy to multitask during virtual trainings. And so I look forward to the fact that it's going to be an in-person training. I think there will be a higher engagement with people being in the room. And my rock name is Blue Floral Blondie.
I think we're going to have a road show by the time we're done. Okay. Thank you. And I should give a shout out. I know Joyce will support what I'm about to say, but I think Catherine, when she saw some of these scenarios, said we should do this in person. And Jody, that comment about doing it in person, it's going to be an interesting dynamic to practice live in person. So shout out to Catherine for supporting us as well. Kayla?
Hi, I'm Kayla Robinson, and I am the Communications Manager for OCCH, and I've been here a little over a year. I guess my personal observation, kind of piggybacking off of Jody, that I am excited as well that it's in person. One of the teams that I work closely with had conversations after the meeting, and I felt like it was a lot more in depth. Just about like self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And it was a little more powerful than the virtual, in the virtual setting. So I'm excited about that as well. And I guess my band name would be Pink Avocado Toast.
I don't know. I don't want to declare a winner yet, but that's pretty good. And Joyce?
Yeah, that was a good one, Kayla. So I'm Joyce Perry. I'm Director of HR here at OCCH, and I've been here almost 3 years. My personal observation or lesson from the April webinar, I think one of the things Granville said was something that really stood out for me too, how we talked about the trigger, the impulse, the behavior, and the result, and how you should pause before you have your impulse. Actually, Catherine even talked about that one. I think a lot of us, that really resonated, how when we're triggered, we tend to just immediately go to the behavior and response instead of, pausing for a second, thinking about our impulse, asking the questions, is this really true about this person? What are my own personal stories coming into play here, and all of that. I also thought it was interesting to learn about how the personality types influence emotional intelligence, like through the DISC lens as well. And then I also liked how it related to psychological safety, and especially the question about leaders encouraging staff to speak up by saying things like, I might have missed something, I need to hear your voices or whatever. I think those are all really important. And I kind of echo everyone else's sentiment that doing it in person, I think, is going to be so much more powerful. So I'm so glad that Catherine suggested that. The workplace scenarios that the engagement committee came up with were so good, and I think so relevant to our workplace. And so this will give us a chance, in real time live, to just kind of work through how can we use our emotional intelligence to tackle some of these things. And so I think it's going to be a great session. My rock band name, I'm wearing a teal shirt, and the last thing I had was cheddar cheese. So teal cheddar, teal cheese. It sounds a little gross, but I mean, yeah.
I think between all of us, we have Woodstock recreated. We could just stay on the stage for 24 hours.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all, and thank you for the personal introduction. So when we all get together on September 12th, and we're walking around the room, I can now tease each of you about your Brock band name, and we can lean on each other as we do the facilitation in the exercises. Thank you. So I'm going to do a real quick run through. Everybody should have seen these slides before in the April session, but just to kind of refresh. And Joyce, I'll ask you, everybody has a copy of this edited slide version. And Joyce, did you get a chance to send out the updated handout that I sent, I think, Friday morning with the last page 5
Yes.
on it? Okay.
Well, gosh, I should just double check. I'm pretty sure I sent it out Friday afternoon, but I should just double check and make sure that I did.
Yeah, so a couple things if people have the copy of the slide deck or the handout worksheet that we're going to use. There's a page 5 on that worksheet that we're actually going to use as a guide for our own practice when we get to this. So, so some of these you'll have in 2 or 3 different ways in front of you. But obviously, just to hit the highlights again, we recognize that in the workplace there are priorities and what we call polarities. These are sometimes competing goals or competing priorities. So we talk about, let's just recognize, even functionally, we may have a different priority. So how do we approach these with both and, not either or? How do we do the best of both of those goals and priorities? We obviously talk about navigating change, our role as influencers. And you may remember I used that coaching approach of support and challenge. So how do we support, challenge, and move people forward? The impact of our personality differences. I know we currently use DISC, so we'll take a look through that lens. And then diversity, DEI, and then workload and capacity is one of the scenarios that we have in front of us. So the basic work, again, is done by Daniel Goleman that says emotional intelligence accounts for 80% of career success. We all have technical skills, especially early as we're building a foundation. But as we are leaders of influencers, emotional intelligence really makes the difference. Those components of emotional intelligence, am I aware? Self-awareness. Am I aware of my habits and patterns? Do I know, for example, Richard Needles is high I, secondary D. So I love to influence, and I'm going to do it in a commanding way. So if I know that about myself, can I regulate my behavior to when do I need to be more supportive? When do I need to be more analytical? Moving to the other quadrants of the personality viewpoint. Can I motivate myself to the right behavior for the right audience at the right time? Can I recognize where you are with empathy? What's important to you? What are you feeling? And then do I have social skill to coach, guide, facilitate, help you get forward for the thing that we need to do together? So those 5 components. Then I talked about if a leader, if an individual has a good emotional intelligence, that's the foundation for creating psychological safety for a team. And psychological safety is that environment where team members are safe to take risks, be vulnerable in front of each other, and be able to speak up so people hear what we need to hear. I didn't put this slide in here, but in April we talked about there were 4 occasions for psychological safety that are most important. When I'm a learner, do I feel comfortable learning and making mistakes? Collaborating, I'm a partner. Inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, and challenger. Do I feel safe challenging the status quo in a professional manner, mature manner? So this ties into Amy Edmondson did this work and created that survey, which again is in the April deck, about all those conditions that determine if an organization has a psychologically safe environment. And the highlights there was it's okay to make a mistake, to bring up those tough issues. It's okay to be different. She points that out in the survey questionnaires. It's okay to take a risk. This is really important for me. It's okay to ask for help. That I have worked with enough of the people at Ohio Capital to know most of the senior leaders will say they don't know everything. It's okay to ask for help. And if you see people doing that around you, it becomes okay for you to ask for help. And we will not be undermined. Nobody's got an ulterior motive. That's a psychologically safe environment. Lastly, she talks about, am I appreciated for my unique skills and talents? So in April, we talked about those deeper elements, but they all start with being emotionally intelligent as an individual. If I can understand my own style, my own motivations, what's important to you, and we can go forward together, then we've created that psychologically safe environment. Any questions on EI or emotional or psychological safety before we take a quick glance back at personality styles?
No question, but I do think that it's great. Buddy reminded everyone that we have the Amy Edmondson book on psychological safety in our Libro library for all OCCH staff to take on. So
good, thank you. And Joyce, I suspect you're keeping an eye on the chat question, so I appreciate that as well. So if we just glance again, and what I've done here is meld DISC with a personality tool I use called the Berkman. And Joyce and I have talked about the kind of the Berkman, what we can learn through that. But melding those two, that D clearly focusing on practical results and the what. The high I focusing on the who, and the high S focusing on the why, and the high C focusing on the how. So each one of those styles has their own preference, their own needs, and when they're overdone, their own stress behaviors. So
one of the things that's going to be, sorry, I think one of the things that's going to be important to say too, when we do this at the staff retreat, is put that disclaimer out there that, you know, probably 60-70% of our staff have taken the DISC, but about 25-30% of new folks have not, because we're transitioning over to Berkman at the beginning of next year. And so we didn't do DISC for people that have started probably within the last 9 months or so. So we want to make sure that, you know, that they have the opportunity to kind of take a look at these quickly and say, you know, where do I think I fall on this spectrum, since they haven't actually been tested, and they can probably see themselves in these descriptions.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Joyce. Is everyone comfortable with that? So imagine you're a table guide, and we are on our little questionnaires. We facilitate the scenarios. We'll ask people, how do you think your personality style would impact that? Is everyone comfortable with what Joyce just said, that if you haven't had the DISC, you can turn to that person and say, which one of these feels like you? And be aware of your natural style and when you might overdo that. So I see most heads nodding. And again, I'll be kind of that general facilitator in the room. So if we have anything at a table, I'll be circulating to help guide any of those kinds of questions. Yeah. And Joyce, folks know about Berkman, so thank you. So any questions about personality? Again, I'm moving through these pretty quickly as a refresher so we can have some practice time. Okay, so then I think about how do I best bring up and tee up some of these scenarios with those different styles. And if you're dealing with what we call the Berkman Red or the high D, you want to explain the logic and be ready for those questions. The high I is going to be more influential. You almost have to tell them a story. The high S often relates to a visual. So if you can draw a picture, that's a great way to communicate. And then the high C is going to want to know the steps. What do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? And let's see, who's my communications person on the Kayla? Thank you. So when I talk about communications, I'll often say great communicators are able to do each of these four to have a complete message. Any comments from your communication lens about this one?
Yeah, I would say this is very spot on. I think in order to be a good communicator, you have to be able to look from all points of view. So I think that this does touch on everything, especially from the points of visuals, as well as kind of like being able to like explain it. I think that being able to learning how to explain things for all audiences is really important. So I really like this chart.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. And then hopefully if you consider all of these four, you're going to hit those different personality styles that will resonate with each person. So I put this slide in here. You don't have this one in your chart, but on our worksheet, we're going to talk about how do we move forward in this scenario in alignment with the OCCH, Ohio Capital mission and vision, as well as the values. So just a quick reminder, and this was actually a slide for myself. I want to make sure that I knew what the mission and vision was in that language. And I know everybody in this call and the engagement committee, certainly we value how we are advancing affordable housing and revitalizing communities. I looked at some of those words from the website as well. And if we just keep those big things in mind, we're likely moving toward the right decision. Then in terms of the values, we are going to have in our handout, you actually using the values as a checklist. So if we face this scenario, we would, as guides or facilitators, what options or behaviors would align with being collaborative and communicative? Which ones would align with showing respect, recognizing expertise, holding accountability, building trust? What's the most innovative solution we could have for this scenario? And you hear me asking a lot of open-ended questions. So as a table guide, I'm hoping that I can model in the room on the 12th and even during this call. Your role is not to be the expert, not to have the perfect answer, but to be that guide to ask open-ended questions.
So just for clarity, as we're walking through each of the workplace scenarios, and every single table will have 1 or 2 workplace scenarios out of the 5 that they're going to go through with their table. And so, Richard, your suggestion is to go through, as we're going through those scenarios with our table, to ask questions and kind of coach the answers, ask open-ended questions like, what's a way to approach this that shows inclusion, or that, really recognizes and produces more growth in the team or in the company as we're doing it. And that's kind of where you're going with it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And a couple more slides, and then we will actually get to a practice. So we've seen this one from April as well, and Joyce alluded to this on a very practical, personal view. I recognize that when situations arise, when triggers occur for me, that I have a natural impulse based upon my personality style. Some of those elements of emotional intelligence I am a little better at than a couple of the others. And am I pausing, hitting that pause button, as Granville Buddy, I think, reinforced, and I'm choosing the right behavior, which gets me the overall result that I want. And then I made the point that as leaders, it's important for us to make that choice, and everyone's watching our behavior. People don't know what necessarily triggered me. They'll see the result, but they will really watch the behavior. So as an engagement committee member, as a leader, as a project person, individual contributor, people are watching your behaviors. So choosing that right behavior is most important. So we're going to practice a little bit. That was a quick refresh. Any comments on slides we've seen so far?
I had a conversation with someone recently when they were talking about triggers, and then they were sharing that the converse to that is called a glimmer, and that sometimes it's important to try to find things that spark a glimmer as well as a trigger. I didn't know if that was something that you've come across or is relevant to this, or I honestly, I can't remember who was telling me that, but I found it kind of intriguing.
I love that. Yeah, a glimmer, a spark. Yeah, very good. And that's even a nice positive word. So I'm going to stop sharing this slide deck, And I am now going to share the document, the handout. Does everybody have this in front of them in some format?
Yeah.
So I think we're all probably familiar with the scenarios. So again, thank you for putting these together. And this is what makes it real and practical. And as we were doing our introductions, everyone said, we're looking forward to September because we can do the deeper dive and make it real. How do we practice showing up in real work scenarios? So I've got to tell you, as a coach and consultant, these feel very real to me. And in my corporate life, I've lived most of these as well. And if we do them right, we can take some of the tension out and move them forward with good choices. So the bottom of this page we're looking at, I'm going to ask people to walk through the elements of emotional intelligence related to the scenario. By the way, I'm looking at my clock. We've got 20 minutes. So we as a team are going to come back and practice one of these scenarios. I'm going to ask you to say, how would your personality style impact the positives of what you might say about this scenario? What story would you tell yourself? And I'll model that. What are the organizational priorities and polarities? What different departments may have what could appear to be competing priorities or polarities around these scenarios? How do we just get that out on the table? And what are those other stakeholder needs? What behaviors would align with those values of Ohio Capital? And then this little guide in the table, remember these things. These are the positive things to keep in mind about how you can move some of these things forward. And then your personality style, that communications guide. But this is what I'm going to ask you to focus in on September 12th. So let's imagine that you are at a table and you've got Joyce is probably going to be around 5 people each, maybe, since we now have 8 people who will be there, I think. So maybe 5 or 6, may have as many as 7 at some of the tables. Joyce and I'll be working on, who's going to be there and how to split them up and have the tables balanced. But my thought is that you could use this page 5 now of the handout to say, we are working with scenario 3. Let's just do a little quick around the table and say, how do you feel you are at these 5 elements? So to model this, I'm going to say, I'm fairly aware of my style, aware of my emotional reactions. Empathy is the one that I need to make sure I work on. I need to slow down. I need to ask more open-ended questions. Then an emotional story is that I might tell myself, why can't we just move this forward? I might tell myself that because my personality is high I, high D, and I want to move things forward. If you look at the top ID, I want to be fast. I want to keep things moving. So business priorities and possible scenarios, well, wait a minute, underwriting may want this, and development may want this, fundraising may want this. So we just put those on the table and talk about it. So we process it personally, emotionally, organizationally.
I have a quick question. Since I'm a high C, I just I like to have things written down and all the stuff that you just said. There's no way I'm going to be able to say it like you just said it. So I would want to write it down or have a cheat sheet to be able to use as I'm at the table facilitating these questions and getting responses.
Perfect.
So I'm just saying that will we like these 5 types of scenarios, will we pick a scenario like today and actually be able to kind of work on that and kind of plan or prepare for that? So You know,
that's a-
be
that's a-
able to ask those right questions.
That's exactly what we want to do right now, if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah, we're gonna have by the way, Richard, I did figure out that if the majority of the staff comes to the meeting and there are seven, you know, 7 of us facilitating, since I mean, I know you'll be the head facilitator, but as far as the table guides, and with Jody out, that will leave 7 of us, including me, to kind of be table guides. And so we should have about 9 people at each table. Some folks might even have 10 folks at a table.
Okay.
So the tables will be fuller than what we thought initially. But yes, each table is there's going to be assigned seating. So each person is going to have 1 leader at their table and then also staff. And each table will also have 1 or 2 assigned questions based on, you know, what you feel like that you think that you would be the best to lead or guide, or based on what I think would be the most helpful for your group to talk about. You know, for example, like if a leader and a facilitator, you know, are both happen to be folks with this kind of lingering, you know, issue. Like if Jody was going to be there, you know, one of Jody's workplace scenario was about the bandwidth issue and how to ask for help and how to offer help. So I would have probably said, Jody, why don't you facilitate that one, since that one was your question, but kind of looking at it that way. So every person will get 1 or 2 questions assigned to them, and you will have time to prepare a script if you would like to, kind of to walk you through that. So.
And then are the tables going to be divided, like, we're going to make sure somebody from each of the departments are there?
We are trying to make sure that different departments are there, that like I said, that no more than 1 leader is at a table, those kinds of things. We're being really thoughtful about how we do the placement, and not just for the breakout sessions, but just for the whole thing, so that people are interacting with people that they don't normally interact with too. So.
Okay.
We're back at the Mid-Ohio, right?
No.
Oh, never mind then. Where are we meeting? I'm just trying to visualize space. Like, are we just all in one room but broken into?
It's a totally new space, and I don't even know what the space looks like.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I was going to say, somebody's going to give me the address where I should show up, but that's okay.
Yes, that's forthcoming. Hillary is working to reserve the spot. So as soon as it's confirmed, we'll definitely send that out.
Yeah, very good. And I want to reinforce that I'll be in the room to help, you know, walking around. And Granville, I want to be very sensitive to what you said. As a high C, I want to make sure you feel you've got a good checklist. I want to make sure you're comfortable that you don't have to have the answers. And if you have some 2 or 3 open-ended questions, then that's going to guide the table forward. And Joyce and I have also talked about splitting up the senior leadership team. So hopefully there'll be, you know, Catherine's direct reports. There'll also be a senior person at each table as best we can make that math work as well. Okay. So again, I want to applaud you guys for being engaged, no pun intended, and for volunteering, stepping up to this. We're making this real and practical. So let's go back. I'm looking at the 5 scenarios. I'm going to keep this sheet in front of me because my hope is that this may be something like a checklist or a guide for the conversation. So I'm going to play the table guide, and if it's appropriate, let's see. Is number 3, would that cover everybody? You've been asked to lead a project that will involve major changes in workflow across multiple departments. You need to influence, build consensus, and get buy-in among several stakeholders. How will you move this change toward adoption? How will you convince resistors? How will you enforce the change?
That was Granville's question. Yeah, I think that's a great one, because we're all given opportunity to, you know, navigate change, you know, help influence change and all of that. So
I can't imagine an IT leader being challenged with this one, but so with that scenario in mind, if it's okay, we'll use that one. I'll be the guide, and so you all are at my table. Okay. So Thank you for being here. We've been challenged to talk about number 3. So Richard just reviewed with us those elements of emotional intelligence. Which one of those 5 do you think you're pretty good at? Which one of those 5 do you think you may need to develop a little more strongly as you think about this scenario? And that's a real question. I'll ask for some answers.
I think for me, I have my own self-awareness on how I feel about the particular change, right? Because I'm the one that's trying to influence the change and get buy-in for it. I think the biggest challenge will be in, I think I'm also pretty good at empathy. I'll take the time to understand how other people are feeling about it, but then having the social skill to be the emotional mentor to get people to come aboard with the change would probably be my biggest challenge on this one.
Couple other voices.
I was just going to say, as far as influencing and building consensus to get buy-in, I'd like to identify the stakeholders, who the stakeholders are first. And I feel more at ease when I have a one-on-one meeting with those stakeholders, so I can kind of present my case and why it's important to get their buy-in and talk about the positives and the negatives if we don't move forward. So I like to get their buy-in ahead of time before we have a formal meeting about it. But that's one thing I like to do. But with the resistors, you're always going to have those folks that are the resistors, and that's where I always kind of have a little bit of trouble trying to convince some people, because some people just want to resist because it's just change in general. They don't want to change. That it's good the way it's been for the last 5 years. Why do we need to change now? And there's always those people that push back no matter what. And at some point you have to just enforce the change, and you have to just tell them this is why we're doing this, and we have to move forward. But
so it sounds like that social skill, emotional mentoring, moving people forward might be something that both Granville and Joyce recognize. They're pretty good at those other ones. That last one, they'd like to build that skill further. Let's hear one more voice on that element of emotional intelligence.
I think that for me, I would have to look at me to get this project done. I'm an I. I'm a dead in the middle I, so I'm a strong I. I have a chance to be, or I have a tendency to be expressive when I talk, animated, which might intimidate others. People that are more soft-spoken are often intimidated by the way I present. And so I have to keep remembering that. And because I'm a little bit loud, I might run over somebody who's more soft-spoken, and I have to remember that, and that their ideas, while they may be trapped inside of them a little bit because of their shyness, I have to look for ways to pull that out of them so that their opinion is counted for as well. So I think if I were to lead a project that was going to involve major changes, I would have to really police myself a lot through that.
Very good. So I'm going to build on that to say you're going to double down on hitting the pause button. And Granville, Joyce, I'm going to incorporate something that Jody just said to say I'm going to double down on those open-ended questions as I think about my own emotional intelligence. What is most important to you as we might kick off this project? What's a first step that we could do together? So break it down and get that person on board for a trial, a pilot. Could we do this together and then check and see how it's progressing? So what I want to do is just demonstrate, just keep asking those open-ended questions as you're around the table. You're going to get a very healthy conversation going. If all you do is say, which of these 5 are you good at? Which one do you think you might want to work on? And then people are just going to naturally have a good conversation at the table. And then you get at the story that they might tell themselves. And someone, let's see, who was it? Granville, you said your style. Jody said your style. People are going to bring in the third part of this little exercise sheet here to talk about their style. If they don't, you can ask an open-ended question to say, how do you think your personality style would impact how you see this? So again, I want everybody to be comfortable. You don't need to be the expert in DISC. People just asking that question will naturally start talking about it.
I think the emotional story is a really powerful one too, because I think whenever we're triggered, we always have a story about the other person. Like, you know, I'm also mostly I, but a little bit of D. And so, you know, for me, before I was a little bit more self-aware, my first thing was, you know, I'm excited about something, I'm influencing it ideally. And if somebody is more reluctant or not completely bought in, you know, my thought used to be like, why are they always trying to hold up what I'm trying to do? Like, why is this person always resisting? Why does this person always try to shut down anything positive that I'm trying to accomplish around here? You know, and that was, and then growth over time, you know, helped me to realize like, oh, they might be a C. They need to really think it through. They need the details. They need time to marinate on it before they have a response, and, you know, can really go all in. They might have questions, you know, so pulling myself back. But that's why I think the emotional story is really important, because even before DISC, I had learned that, you know, I always have a story about like what the problem is, and it was never me, right? It never is, right? When you're triggered, the person triggering you is always the problem. And so I think that one is just such a powerful question to talk through as well. And I think that will really spark things in.
Yeah.
Or somebody that's a C might have a story like, why is so-and-so always trying to push things and jam them down my throat and not give me a second to, like, you know, think about it? Like, why are they trying to rush and bulldoze over everyone? Or, you know, so we all have our stories.
Yeah. And what I'm sensing is that, and the examples we've just used, the other construct that I hope everyone's comfortable with is being vulnerable yourself. So if you're the table guide, and if you can say, I know I do this, these are the mistakes I make, or these are the stumbles that I make, and showing vulnerability that I'm not perfect, you're quickly going to get those other 8 people joining you. Oh, I do the same thing. Then that becomes a healthy conversation around, okay, so let's go back to this big project's being implemented. How are we going to feel about it? What story are we telling ourselves? And how is a personality style impacting that story? And then what should we do together? Now, I want to talk briefly about
Tamara
business.
has her hand raised, so I want to just
yes,
let her pop in.
Oh, hi, I'm just, I would probably start by just probably quickly listing what I know and what I don't know, what my pros and cons are. This is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know. So if there is someone on this team that is a power player here, if you want help here, I'd be happy to help you so that I could learn this, because I have no idea what this is, and I want to know. And that would be my way of asking for help without saying, dumb here. I guess that would be my way of showing my weakness, by inserting my own humor, which is what I do. But that's how I would kind of show all of my cards everywhere. And then hopefully, like you were mentioning, or someone, that would be how I would sort of try to get everyone else to go, ooh, yeah, same. Yeah, me too. This is where, but I guess that's where I would want to then get everybody on, yep, this is where I can, I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So then, if we I'll use your phrase, show our cards. and this is who I am, people will naturally join you. The other thing I've been thinking about, I'm sensitive to time. Joyce, do we have 2 minutes? Do we have a hard stop?
Yeah, I think we definitely have 2 minutes. Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and.
So I told Joyce that I wound up making an offer. If anyone on this call wants to reach out and spend 15, 20 minutes with me, anytime between now and the 12th, just give me a quick email and we'll set that up. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable one-on-one and as our group. The other thought I was having is that you could even kick off your table by saying, let's each take a few minutes and write our answers in this blank space on the worksheet. Everybody will have a worksheet. So it's also important with the S's and C's to give them some thinking time. So I may do that as a general facilitator. Now that this session has helped me think through some of these things, so I want to thank you again. I may say each table, you got your scenario, each person take a few minutes and just answer how you would fill out these, and then the table guide will circle back and lead you and walk you through it.
I like that idea. And
Do we
again, everyone in the committee, I will send out your, the workplace scenario that you will be responsible for, possibly 2. Richard, will we have time for every table to do 2 workplace scenarios?
Yeah, is it 2 hours on the 12th?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we should plan for 2.
Okay, so I'll send out your 2 workplace scenarios. If I send them out and you're like, oh no, this is not one that I can handle, I would prefer to steer away from that, let me know. We can move them around and shift them around. So.
And have you sent out that page 5 yet? My copy only has 4 pages. I don't know.
Oh, this is the on Friday when I sent out the Zoom link, it has this updated worksheet with it as an attachment. It went out Friday at like 9:50 something, I think.
Yeah. So I want to reinforce the offer. I'd love to spend 15, 20. Anybody wants a half hour? That's fine too. To walk through and how you might construct your table. And again, I'll be in the room. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I want to go back to, this is making emotional intelligence and psychological safety real. And people will get it that, oh, there are other scenarios that come up where I need to hit the pause button and consider my style, my own emotional intelligence, the competing business priorities, and the alignment with the values. And if we make our decisions after that pause, 90% of the time, we're going to be doing the right thing.
And are we sharing any of these questions or activity with staff in advance?
Well, the staff knows we're going to do a deeper dive. Like I explained the staff meeting this morning, the staff knows we're going to do a deeper dive into EQ and work through some actual workplace scenarios. They don't know what the workplace scenarios are. I think there might be some value in sending this worksheet out to people in advance so that they can bring that, or maybe not, because people will forget to bring it. Maybe we just have these worksheets to hand out at the staff retreat so that everyone has them in front of them.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I want to thank you again. This is kind of neat to see people step up and making this real and the deeper dive.
Absolutely. I appreciate it as well. Thank you, Richard. And thanks everyone here for being willing to host these conversations at the staff retreat and get the momentum going on applying the principles we've learned.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on so I can make sure I got the recording. But any questions before we jump off? Okay, I look forward to seeing your faces one-on-one and certainly on September 12th. And Jody, you're off the hook. We'll get you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
You.
Bye.